My next guest is the former two-time Eternal MMA Lightweight Champion, and he returns to the cage on November 25th, where he'll be featured in the co-main event of Brave 76 that happens in Jakarta, Indonesia. David, welcome to the show, and talk about a fight coming from left field, as we say in America. I was completely surprised when I saw your name surface on Tapology, sir, about Brave 76.
Oh, bro, I think you and I were both surprised. I couldn't believe it when they contacted and gave me the offer. I was like, wait, what? I wasn't even sure it was real because I've been getting a lot of friend requests from all the local promotions that are actually fake accounts. I'm like, oh, this is probably just something similar. But no, it turns out it's all legit.
David, before we talk about you, I have to talk about your gym because a lot has been happening in your gym over the past several months. You had the Shellhammers. They both went out there and took care of business. That was pretty amazing. Jake Piper, he won at Hex 22. He's a really uniquely talented guy that I have my eye on. I think he's going to be something really special. And then John Frazier just goes out there and he wins the Eternal MMA Middleweight Championship for the second time. Like, there's a lot going on, and I know I'm leaving out a whole bunch of people, but I mean, your reaction to all that, you guys are all leveling up, it seems.
Yeah, man, it seems like ever since we transferred to the new gym, we've all sort of come together, and it's just really like building off of one another. It's become sort of a melting pot for the talented fighters on the Sunshine Coast. You're talking about Thomas Shellhammer and his dad getting wins down Grow Strong. Jake Piper, Jake's just one of those guys that I'm like, the future is so bright for that kid, and like every bit of success he gets, man, like he deserves it. He's a wonderful guy. But the big one, man, is like like Jamie Eaton and John Fraser, like those two are really, they're right on the edge of about to be picked up by bigger promotions, and in particular, like with John winning the middleweight title. John is who I would describe as a consummate professional. Or the man, like his work ethic, his devotion to his craft, his willingness to do whatever to increase his skill. For me, I'm very, very fortunate to train with someone like John. So it's great when you go out and you see him, reclaim the title and just back on top of the mountain.
What was that like for you, David? Because surely you see some parallels between his martial journey and your own. Like, you both have been on massive cards. You've both won championships against some of the best contenders in Australia, and you've recaptured your titles. And to see him do that, you must have like a really unique relationship with him.
Yeah, man. Look, it's the fact that we're both two-time Eternal champions in our respective weight classes, like that's pretty cool. But just like John as a person and as a fighter, like he's a really awesome guy. I'm very privileged to be able to train with someone like him on a regular basis too. Sort of similarities between us. We just get in, we get our work done together, and then the results speak for themselves, it seems.
What did you think of his performance? Because he put away a very dangerous man in the very first round of that fight. Cobb's a pretty scary guy in his own right. And for him to win in the manner in which he did, I felt that was very impressive.
Oh, man, I wish I was cage side. I was actually at work at the time. But Jane was sending, like, as the card was rolling, Jane's, like, sending me updates on the card, little videos and pictures. And then at first, like, all she sent was a couple videos of John's fight. And, of course, I can't look at it while at work. All I see is the notification, like, videos and pictures. I'm like, oh, no. What's happened? What's the result? Oh, then when I finally see it, it's just like, oh, John just destroyed it.
Well, it was very impressive. And then I suppose I'd be remiss to not congratulate you as well. You fought a former champion in your own right. This was like a super fight that I had circled on my calendar for quite some time. It was a fight that I was really looking forward to watching because Jack Becker, he's a very dangerous guy, a very high-level grappler just like you. And I was like, man, this is going to be a really interesting fight to kind of keep an eye on. For you, though, like the battles started really before you even set foot in the cage. And I was hoping you can maybe shed some light on it. This was mentioned during the broadcast that you had some health difficulties leading up to the bout. And I don't want to ask you anything you're not comfortable talking about, of course, but is there something that you could maybe shed some light on to expand upon what they said on the broadcast?
Yeah, man. So with regards to the Jack Becker fight, man, like that was almost a bucket list item right there. You know, as soon as he came back to the local scene, when he actually replaced me against Aiden Aguilera on Coastal Combat, ever since then I knew that eventually we would fight, and I just wasn't sure when. And then he had his horrific leg injury, and it's kind of like, I wasn't sure if he'd come back after that, but the man's tough, and he did. As for my health leading into that fight, man, I managed to try and rush my weight cut instead of taking my time, and I ended up giving myself heat stroke at the end. Yeah, so I wound up hospitalized after that, and it's crazy, man. Like as soon as I'm being carted off in the ambulance, I'm kind of like, well, that's it. You know, I ain't fighting. But no, they the promoter Cam O'Neill and the commission actually drove out to the hospital and weighed me in there.
Did you think that he might be hesitant to accept the fight? Did you have to renegotiate weights or anything like that in order to make this fight happen?
I know Jane was renegotiating weights type thing, and they eventually settled on super lightweight. I have no idea where Jack was at the time. I don't know if he was still cutting his way down to 70 or if he stopped part way through when they found out what happened to me, because Jane was pretty quick to let them know, hey, David's being carted off in an ambulance. Still, I think the whole being weighed in at the hospital is crazy, man. Like they wheeled me out in a wheelchair, hospital gown, cords dangling out of me everywhere, to step out on the scales in front because they couldn't actually come in because the whole privacy. So I'm out there in the parking lot.
And was that a concern at all, knowing that maybe you weren't at the level of health that you had anticipated being, especially getting ready to fight a very high level, a very dangerous guy like Jack Becker?
Yeah, man. Well, I would have weighed in sometime just before 2 p.m. And I could only describe the next, 24, 30 hours as mental hell. Because kind of like, I knew, like, as bad as I felt and about everything, I knew the fight was still going ahead. But I seriously doubted my ability to do so. I was like, I don't think my cardio is going to work. I don't think my brain is going to hold up to the shots because Jack hits pretty damn hard. And I'm like, I don't think I should be doing this. I remember like asking to get like unclipped from all the cords so I can at least walk around for a little bit, and I just could not find my balance or anything, and I managed to like lock myself away in the toilet, just freaking breaking down. I'm like I'm just being dragged out to get killed in this fight is what I was feeling.
And at what point do you flip the switch in your mind where you're like, you know what, like I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna let it rip, we're gonna see what happens? At what point do you like come to the conclusion that, you know what, I'm moving forward with this fight?
The reality that the fight was going to happen was always there. No, I know myself, and I know I'm not going to say no. Someone else has to say no for me, and no one was going to. So I'm like, this is happening. And it wasn't until right up when I actually met my coach, Ryan, and at the back, and that's when sort of the mentality started to change. It's kind of like, right, let's do this.
Jack Becker, I think about him, I think about, as I said before, high level grappling. Like he's like a type of guy that is a major threat anytime you're in a clinch with him, anytime you're on the ground with him. Like similar to you, like that's just not a type of guy that you want on top of you. Bad things are going to happen to you if you give him time up there. So moving into this fight, like when you thought about his attributes, when you thought about his skills, and this is a guy that you've watched for years compete, you know how Jack fights. Did you feel that you needed to approach him maybe a little bit differently compared to some of your other prior opponents?
In a sense, yeah, a little bit differently, but not too far off what I normally do, man. I don't like to deviate too far because once instinct takes over, you tend to just go with what you normally do anyway.
Mm.
So I never want to deviate too far from what I know that I will be doing. So with Jack, it was just more of a you know a bit more sort of movement, staying out of range, like not getting into like long brawls with him because he will have the power advantage, and also just minding my P's and Q's when it came to the grappling.
When I watched this fight and when I watched your others, this looked like a different David compared to the ones I've seen before. Like your striking won this fight. It wasn't your grappling, it wasn't your wrestling. It was your striking that won this fight. The leg kicks made a big difference in this fight, I felt. And you also landed several different body kicks on him as well. And when I think of you, like I've seen you throw kicks before, but not to like this extent. And I was just curious, like, did you feel like you had specifically a striking advantage over Jack?
I felt like going into the fight that he had the power advantage, but I had the more sort of varied striking. And at least that was what I was going with, and I felt like I could use that variety to sort of really drain not so much. I mean, the physical gas tank, yes, but like more playing on him mentally is what I was thinking, and I do believe it worked.
It absolutely worked, and one of there were two key points in the fight to me that I recall, and they both involved in a clinch exchange. You were on the fence, and he was grappling with you, and then he wanted your back on two different occasions. That, by my count, there may have been more, but I distinctly recall two different times where he wanted your back, and it looked like he was going for that back mount. But you did an excellent job peeling his hands off, and then eventually framing off him. And I was curious, like that's his money move. Like he wants the back. You took that away from him, and did you sense him maybe getting a little frustrated that he wasn't able to secure back mount on you?
Yeah, well, that was when I was preparing for the fight. That was a key part of the training, was making sure that to deny him that, but not like shut him out completely, but rather at least give him the temptation that it's there, so that he tries harder to work for it, to gain it, and hopefully like continue to drain him that way. So my idea was just rinse and repeat. No matter what he does, freaking back up to the knees, back up to the feet, peel the hands, turn in, frame off, rinse and repeat every time.
Well, it was a masterclass performance, and during the fight, when you're on your stool and you're getting instructions from your coaches, are they telling you anything? Did you have to make any pivots or adjustments over the duration of the fight?
There were a couple of things in between the rounds that Dunstan and Lopez were giving me, but I think the funniest instruction came when I had Jack's back and I was trying to jump on it. You could just hear Ryan go, "No." And it's like, oh, he knows I love jumping the back and trying to chase the finish from there, but he also knows it doesn't work so well on the higher level guys.
I watched the fight a couple of different times. I remember watching it live, which, when I watch Australian MMA live, I'm always in a kind of a state of delirium because it's so early for me. So I always tell myself, like, okay, before I like have too many like strong opinions about anything, I'm going to rewatch it in a more well-rested state, because maybe I might see things a little bit differently the second or third time around. I watched this fight 3 different times, and on my card, I had you winning every round. I had it 30-27 for you. Did you think the exact same?
I was pretty confident I had won at least 2, but a lot of people would tell me later that, hey, yeah, we think you won all 3.
I mean, that's what I saw, but on my card, it was 30-27, but there's also that point where it's like, okay, I can see a world in which you might give him 1.
I wasn't too sure what the idea of a split decision came from. I don't know how you could give him 2. rounds, but even he was confused by it. And I'm sort of glancing to the side, but I'm also looking down at my glove to try and remember what color I am.
At the conclusion of the fight, David, like, what is your plan? Go back and make a return into the cage this soon, or were you actually planning on taking some time off after the Becker fight?
I was told that winning this fight meant that we would, fight for the title October 28th. But I also knew that prior to the fight, I was like, that's too soon. Like, it's too soon of a turnaround without considering, the health concerns they had during the weight cut. The fact that it's a championship fight over in Perth type thing. So I'm like, 28th was too soon. I tried to negotiate for their next show, November 4th. But I was told no, title fight's on the 28th or not. And November 4th, I mean, I would have liked to fight, fought later in the year. Yeah, but November 4th, I was told, was the last Eternal show. So there'd be nothing until next February. And I'm like, oh, well, that sucks. But, I can't make the 28th. They won't do the 4th. So I guess I'm out for the rest of the year. But then along comes this opportunity, late November. I'm like, no way.
You're going to be going up against a guy. His name is Murad Guseinov. I hope I said it right. He's a 5-0 guy. Seems to be quite talented. And I look at him, and he may only have 5 professional fights, but he's got loads of amateur experience. Like, what's your take on your opponent?
He's quite experienced in the amateur scene, man. I think 18 amateur fights all up, then 5 professional fights. Fighting out of I believe he's from Dagestan, but he actually represents and fights out of Bahrain. And that in itself is kind of like, oh, this guy's being basically sponsored by the Bahraini prince. So his training and everything is paid for. He's in a pretty good place in that respect. And as for being a fighter himself, he does seem quite talented. He's amassed a 5-0 professional record in the space of about 2 years. And it does look like he will be. He may be a little bigger than me. I'm not too sure. Like, he's definitely taller. I don't know about weight wise, but I'm looking forward to this fight.
So, David, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your opponent. Seems like a very high-level guy. I'm going to assume his grappling is on point. But when you look at it and you think about the totality of the circumstances against a high-level guy like this with a ton of amateur experience, I think it's safe to say, like, he hasn't fought anybody like you, though. I mean, at 5 pro fights to take on a 2-time champion such as yourself, like, that's no easy task. And he's up for that. And what do you think that says about his willingness to take this fight?
Yeah, man, I do believe he's the kind of guy who would sort of be the fight anyone, anywhere type of mentality, very similar to Hamza in that respect. He does seem, again, he's a talented dude. He's on a tear with his good start in the pros. But I mean, like, I myself was on a good start in the pros, being 6-0 until my boy Josh Tugger came across and fraud checked me.
Well, when you think about him and you look at what he's been able to accomplish in his career, he's found a way to obtain finishes in all of his fights. So when you're looking at a guy like this, like, what's the key to beating a guy that likes to try to come out and be super aggressive? Like, at least in your mind, when you think about all your skills and what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, man. So I'm the idea for me would be that our grappling will cancel each other out. And then I believe, again, very similar to the Jack Becker fight, my varied striking will sort of beat out his power advantage if he has one over me.
And for you, David, like, you look at this guy, obviously he's very talented. He's a young, lauded prospect. It's easy to understand why when you look at his accolades. But when you consider, like, everything that you've accomplished in your career and what you bring to the table, where do you feel like you have advantages over your opponent?
Yeah, for me, again, it comes down to, I guess, experience in the cage. Age. I fought a lot of fights lately, each of decisions or like going 3 rounds type thing. So I've got a lot of time in there, and I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing in there, both grappling and striking wise. And I'm sort of banking on the fact that he's not encountered someone like me just yet. It's sort of like if you want to say, Hamza when he fought Burns. So yeah, I'm sort of going like that.
Hey, well, this guy, you get a win over him, that would put you at 12-5, and it would seemingly open the door up to you for a lot of potential opportunities. What would getting your 12th victory of your professional career at Brave 76, what would that kind of mean for you at this stage?
Well, let's be honest, it'd be the same as getting my 11th victory was, bro. It's in the grand scheme of things, like I don't know. I stopped tracking numbers a long time ago. After a while, they just don't sit. It all sort of blends into one. For me, it's more the experience of just being my first international fight. Going overseas for the first time. It's I think I'm focusing more on that experience as opposed to any of the numbers or what it sets up for me down the future. Even like, I just want to live in the moment for now.
Well, I hope you do, David. And this is a fight that I'm really looking forward to watching you perform in. It's a huge card. It's a huge opportunity, and it's good to see guys like you be able to take advantage of opportunities like this. So I know that we have a lot of people to thank before we let you go, so you can move on with the rest of your day. So if there's anyone that we need to shout out or any of your sponsors that we need to talk about before I let you go, sir, let's do it.
Ryan Doyle, or Chris Jeffrey, and a couple of other guys in there. Yeah, I've got my whole team at Ignite, Sunshine Coast, the guys at Tribal, or even the guys that down Compton's that I've been moving around with lately. Like, yeah, big shout out to them as well. I've got my main supporters, Cajun Canvas, and yeah, I should have written a list, man. I can't keep track of it.
David, I appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you so much. I wish you the best of skill at Brave 76.